Greg Andrick here, bringing you another Business Freedom Conversation post. So there was a really interesting article that the Wall Street Journal picked up. It must have been an article in the New York Times. And I think that this is important for anybody that manages people, runs a business, deals with customers, deals with vendors. We need to be sensitive to this. And the question was asked, this is a 2-year study, 30 different focus groups from all over the country. Is the economy rigged? Unfortunately, the answer that came back for most Americans is yes. So let me show you the slides as to where we're going with this thing. So it's the New York Times, and it's the American Academy of Arts and Sciences looked into this. And unfortunately, the answer that came back for most Americans is that greed is what drives the economy. And they feel out of touch because of that the people at the top have rigged it where they benefit and they don't really care about anybody else. Americans are not thriving. So we're getting all this great economic news that, inflation is under control, the economy is growing, all this stuff, but Americans are not thriving. And when that happens, you may have all this information, but people are not happy because there's a lot of difficulty. So the next thing is that grocery stores and landlords demanding more money constantly. So food and the grocery bills are a major concern of most Americans. I mean, really, Pepsi's raised their prices more than 40% in the last 12 to 15 months, and that caused them to get kicked out of Europe by a major grocery chain. This is what I think the average American is dealing with, that when they go to the store, it's a lot of dissatisfaction of the amount of their budget. I saw another article a couple of days ago in the Wall Street Journal that we're at an all-time high of what Americans are putting a percentage of their income just to buy food. And when it's a stretch and difficult to buy food, there's a lot of unhappiness. There's a disconnect between the macroeconomic story, in other words, what the government's giving us is information like everything's rosy and inflation's under control and the economy's growing and this and that. But you know what? The microeconomic experience, when 85% of Americans can't buy a house and they're stuck in apartments that the landlord keeps raising the rent, when they go to the grocery store and they need a defibrillator to revive them when they see the prices of their basic goods, that's not a good experience, and that's why they're unhappy. It's this lack of financial uncertainty. This is what your employees are dealing with. This is what your customers are dealing with. This is what everybody's dealing with. And this is why there's this dissatisfaction that one needs to be sensitive to if you're running a business and you want to be successful with that business. It's the absence of economic resilience. It just all seems to be one way and people can't get ahead. So this is interesting. What came back in the study is that stress is a rampant part of American life. I don't think they needed a study to figure that out. Okay, this one was really fascinating. Auto loan delinquencies are higher than the Great Recession. So back in 2007 and 8, we're getting all this information about how prosperous everything is. This is a more realistic bellwether. If people are defaulting on their cars, because who in our type of economy wants to default and not have a car, that's a really serious indicator. This one is even worse. In 2022, when all the bennies expired and they weren't renewed, child poverty doubled in 2022. That's disgraceful. Inflation has wiped out wage gains. So this is why your employees are unhappy, because they go to the supermarket, they go to pay their rent, and it's a real stretch and it's really difficult. And the prices of the grocery store keep going up and the landlord keeps asking for an increase. And because the interest rate increases, they can't buy a car. Even if they buy a used car, the interest rate is significantly higher and it's more expensive. And then this was an interesting thing, benefit cliffs. So for lower hourly workers, if they make slightly more, they were using an example, a lady in Chicago, if her income goes $1 over this limit, she loses her child care and food support. And this is why people feel so uncertain. Americans don't feel they are in control of their lives. And this is why everybody's unhappy. This is why 50% of your employees are quiet quitting, why 17% of them want to hurt you, and only a third are doing the job they're supposed to be doing. The system needs to consider not the economy, but rather how Americans are doing. And when 85% of Americans can't buy a home, when they're subject to escalating rents, when the food prices are shocking all the time, when they can't make the payment on their car because the interest rate's been jacked and it's too high, they're unhappy. And we need to recognize this level of unhappiness and figure out how, in our own little cosmic way, do we deal with it. So there you have it. I thought it would be really interesting for you to know what it is, and I think we're going to see more stories like this because I think people, their own personal experience, that microeconomic experience, is not jiving with what we're being told is going on. It isn't a rosy environment out there. It's an extremely difficult one. And if we don't want more trouble and more strife and more difficulty in our business, and actually that attitude to cause the economy to decline, we got to reach out and fix it, and we got to fix it really fast. So anyhow, I hope you found this interesting. It's Greg Andrick, Business Freedom Conversation. I'll catch you on the next one.